think we're just going to give it a couple more minutes or so to let people start coming in. We had about 15 or so people say they were going to be coming today. So, all right, I think we can get started here. If more people start coming in, that is totally okay. Um, for any of the panelists or attendees that don't know me or Bongo, my name's Tate Andre. I'm here with Bongo Thompson. We're both the long range planners here at the county, specifically working on the housing element of the comprehensive plan together. And so with that, that's why we've been tasked with updating the CPPs for affordable housing in coordination with our Planning Technical Advisory Committee, this committee, stakeholders, and the public as well. This is just the beginning of it. Right now, we're on the first draft. My thought to begin this was to just sort of give a review of the feedback timeline so far, and then a summary of the feedback just broadly. So I'm going to go through that and then just sort of open it up to the floor for comments and start the discussion. So back in May is when the first iteration of the CPPs were written, and we received comments from the PTAC subcommittee on that iteration, made some edits to it based off those. And then on June 10th, we had the first conversation with the CPP subcommittee, this committee, and that was Commissioner Waldruff and Mayor Cooper who attended that, got feedback there. And then on June 18th, with that feedback, that's when what I call the second iteration was sent out. That's what was sent out to this body. That's the latest iteration that's been sent out. And with that, we sent it to stakeholder groups, and it was made available to the public. And it's also been iterated with the full body PTAC, the subcommittee, the housing subcommittee of PTAC, and this group. We've got continuous feedback so far. And so just a very broad sort of summary of the feedback we received so far, with the last meeting being with the full body yesterday. That's sort of the latest feedback we've gotten so far. We've got general language adjustments for clarity and consistency. There's a lot of comments on prescriptive language, so concerns on shall language and potential unnecessary mandates, while others voice support and or recommended adding more specificity or strong language to some of the policies. The monitor housing development category, items in the program, while were optional within the wording, may be deemed unnecessary, we talked about it yesterday. There's possibly an updated WAC that will cover the monitoring housing development, and so those items may need to be adjusted or removed. The environmental sustainability category, we had one policy in there, and then we had a suggested one as well from stakeholders. But in our full body PTAC, it sounds like there's going to be a new CPP chapter added specifically for environmental sustainability. There's not a specific way that that has to be done. You can incorporate climate sustainability CPPs throughout it, or you can have its own section. But it sounds our idea is to have our climate subcommittee, climate PTAC subcommittee, sort of work on those, and so the policies in there and the housing one may be more appropriate in the climate resiliency CPPs that are going to be beginning to be worked on. Next is the emergency housing category. It was sort of thought that that policy ended up being redundant, iterating just a WAC and not really adding much to it. And so the removal of that would leave the category empty, but we think it would be very helpful and very important to keep an emergency housing category, as that seems to be a very prominent area of focus within the housing allocations, is how we are going to plan for emergency housing. And so looking for suggested policies on there, we're going to start working on that to help guide those decisions. And finally, feedback also gave a lot of suggested strategy recommendations. A lot of people are like, suggest doing this and this to accomplish this. And so we had a handful of strategies recommended to us as well. So that's just a brief overview. That's really all I have to start this. And so I just want to open it up to everybody for comment, and then we will have a time slotted for attendees to raise their hands and speak on this as well, if desired. If nobody speaks, I'm going to defer to someone. And I see some, yeah, thank you, Michael. Michael, you missed it. But I just gave a brief introduction on the timeline for feedback, and then a summary of the feedback we've gotten thus far. But Amber, you can take the floor.
Oh, thank you. So I joined a couple minutes late too, but you're talking about the draft planning policies for affordable housing, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so you're saying that the emergency housing section, nobody provided any more specific policies in that area, so you guys are looking for some more suggestions there from stakeholders and people that you received comments from?
We heard one or two. Someone had suggested, gosh, I can't remember their exact wording offhand, expedited permitting of emergency shelters or designating kind of safe lots for overnight parking or that sort of thing. But those are the only ones we've received. Certainly, we would be open to feedback from yourself, from this body, and PTAC, the public. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think what is the timeline then for when we want to get these policies adopted?
We are hoping to have a recommendation from this subcommittee and from PTAC to the full SCEO by their meetings in September.
Oh, okay. So we have a couple more months to gather some more feedback, and then we'll have a public hearing on it.
Yes. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. You're saying we'll have an opportunity to get more individual comments in, and then a final decision by the steering committee in September. Is that what you said?
That's what we're targeting, certain. And I'm trying to think how to elaborate on this. We do have a detailed timeline lined out of what we're planning that we're going to be sharing with the steering committee at your meeting next week. But we are planning to circulate it again to the public and our stakeholders, and having two public hearings on this with our planning commission as well as at the steering committee in September. That's the plan.
Okay, great. I appreciate knowing that maybe we can flesh out that section on emergency housing a little bit more. So I'd be happy to keep getting more feedback from community members and stakeholders on that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I think we'll just open it back up if anyone, unless Commissioner Waldron, if you had anything else to add, we might just see if anyone else wanted to chime in there, offer any thoughts, feedback.
Just lowering the hand. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Birch.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, indeed, we can.
Okay. I'm just curious, is the documentation that was sent to us, was that just provided to just this group? Or has it been disseminated out to a larger audience?
Yeah, so that document you have in front of you has been disseminated out more widely. It is publicly available on our website in regards to the items coming before the SCEO next week. It was sent to our planning commission and our stakeholders as well, as including, let me rephrase that. It was also sent to the Planning Technical Advisory Committee.
Okay, because I'm just curious. I've been forwarding most of the information that I receive as a member to our fire chiefs in the fire districts. But sometimes I hate to kind of duplicate effort. If they're already getting it from another source, no need to overload the inbox. So I'm just curious if it went out to the fire districts, each individual district, or can that be distributed through myself as the representative?
I think you're absolutely welcome to distribute it yourself. My recollection is, I think it was sent to one or two fire districts in terms of just because they accepted as stakeholders. It was not sent to every fire district individually.
And my main concern would be the more larger ones, the one that I'm affiliated with Spokane Valley Fire, those that have that, kind of that jurisdiction within the areas we're mostly talking about. Although we could see it down at our smaller districts as well. But anyway, thank you. I just need to know. I don't want to, overload and duplicate efforts, because then stuff doesn't get looked at. But I can send this out so that we can get some other eyes looking at it from a fire district perspective, because this will have a huge impact. And also, I'm sure some items may come up, as we look at housing, especially if we're looking at expedited, making sure that we're not sacrificing any of the fire codes or anything like that's going to impact public safety.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea. Yeah, no, we would certainly welcome feedback from. I completely lost my train of thought at the mid sentence, but yeah, we would love to hear from the fire districts on that. So please do send it to them. We would love to hear from them.
I did notice too, also in the documentation, that there's some tax relief for some of the individuals. But I'm curious that if there's, with some of these increases that we could see, especially in this area, I could see from a public safety standpoint, our response, a number of responses or number of calls could go up. I mean, they're already going up just as it is normally. But I want to make sure, as a fire commissioner, that I'm not having to go back to our citizens and ask for, huge increases of funds to accommodate some of these, increases in these areas. Is there any kind of thought? Is there going to be additional monies provided from other sources to help the fire districts, or is this something we're just going to have to try to, accommodate in our M&O levies?
Yeah, so we've not quite gotten to that level of discussions on funding yet. This is still somewhat preliminary. So I think we would absolutely welcome that discussion from the subcommittee, from the full body SCEO, but we haven't quite started that level of detail on this.
Okay, I did see some tax relief issues there, so I was just curious if any of that happened, but thank you. Appreciate that.
Yes, of course. And I see some new people are joining us, so we're just kind of discussing the affordable housing CPPs, and if any of the excuse me, if any of the SEO members would like to chime in, please feel free to do so. Mr. Cathcart.
Yeah, thank you. I was just looking through a few sections there, and nothing at this time that I would suggest adding, but I do have a few questions, and I'm just not sure if this is maybe the best forum for kind of really getting into the weeds of some of the things in there. And so will there be some opportunities to really have more in the weeds, in-depth discussions of some of the, various policy points that have been included or excluded from this document?
I think this is a great time to do it. The only time to get more in the weeds, I guess, would be just to shoot us an email and we could discuss it with you. But this is certainly
Sure.
an appropriate place to have those discussions. So
Well,
if you have, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I guess a couple of points here. I mean, one, when we're talking about anti-speculation taxes, are we talking highest and best use? How is that implemented? I'm trying to understand that in particular, because I think that's a pretty broad reaching term. And so if you could just help me understand the thinking there.
Yeah, so we kind of left that one intentionally a little bit more open-ended so that jurisdictions could kind of take it in whichever way is appropriate for them. If there's interest from this body in, doing it this way instead of that way, or maybe we should mention, oh, we don't want to do this so much, but we would like to look more into that. We could put a little more specificity into that. As of currently, we kind of left it a little bit more open so people can interpret it as is applicable to their context.
Okay, and then in innovation planning or innovation zoning?
That was one, my recollection is, let's see, I see Tate's pulling it up here. I believe we ended up cutting that one out. Let me rephrase
Okay.
that. As we've gotten feedback in since this draft, we've internally been marking things for editing. And that was one that we determined was probably not necessary.
And then another here is just the line about supporting tenant-based rental assistance. And I guess, again, in the weeds, trying to understand where does the funding come from for programs like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. We haven't quite gotten to that level of discussion yet. I think that was just, what's the phrasing I'm looking for? We just kind of threw that out as an option for, if it's appropriate for your community, if there's a funding source available for you, this might be something you want to pursue. It is not our intention to mandate it. And, as such, we have not identified X, Y, or Z sources of funding for that.
Okay. And then just the last one I'll bring up for this time is limiting single family in certain areas. And I will just say, I mean, I'm the biggest proponent of BOCA and programs like that, but you are never going to find me supporting something that opposes a certain type of housing.
Can you remind me the section you're referring to? I want to pull it up here. So let's see.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it here. I just was on.
Yeah, please take your time.
I'll put it in the chat here in just a second.
Perfect. And I'm looking through it as well on our end. I know what you're referring to. I just want to make sure.
And again, I mean, these are kind of broad, but it to me, it intimates that would be the policy of sort of opposing a housing type. And I think we're better off with incentives and policies that promote the right housing types rather than policies that limit housing types.
Okay. Yeah, I'm following you there. Oh gosh, if you think the amount I've looked at this, I would remember where everything is, but
I know, and I was just looking at it too. Anyway, we can move on, and I'll copy and paste it into the chat when I find it.
Okay, sounds good. We can circle back on that one.
Great.
All right, so I'm going to open it back up to the floor. If anyone else has questions, feedback to provide, we would certainly welcome that.
Bongo, this is Joel White. I do apologize. I have to just admit that I did not receive anything in preparation for the meeting, and so I've not received any information from you guys so far. So I'm a little bit in the dark, so I will get on it quickly. If you guys could re-forward me the information so I have access, or show me where I need to go, because nobody told me I had to go anywhere. So just trying to figure out why I did not receive that, but as a member, but just trying to figure out why I did not receive anything. So
Yeah, our apologies. That's just a little bit of a mix up on our end. Let's see here. It's on our website on our agenda page, but I'm going to get it over to you. I don't think I have your email saved anywhere offhand. Um, so I'm going to get that over to you in just a moment. If you bear with me, I can get
Thank
it
you.
over. Yes, of course.
So in the diversity or diversify and increase housing stock bullets, I can't tell the difference between number 1 and number 2.
Yeah, that was something I think we actually adjusted for from feedback. It was originally combined together, but then I think it was split into two because of the differentiation between jurisdictions, as in cities, versus the second one, which is us at the county, making sure we both were doing the same thing. But we had gotten that feedback before, and I think we are just going to reword it to include that it is something that both jurisdictions, cities do, small towns do, but also this county does within our unincorporated urban areas. So that was the intent behind it, but it looks like we are going to adjust to make that more clear and combine it into one policy.
And what does it mean to encourage regulatory support?
Let me see here.
Shouldn't we adopt regulatory support?
I
Same
think
same
that
section.
would, yeah, I think shall encourage. Sorry, let me read through this again. Shall encourage.
There's a lot of colors. It is really hard to
Yeah, I
scan
think
through.
that's one of those small things where it's like the prescriptive versus soft, because it's, if we say Spokane County jurisdictions will do regulatory support for the construction of accessory dwelling units, I think it's maybe a concern around being too prescriptive. That's the first thought that comes to my head, but those are those small language changes that I think we are, looking at. So I'll make note of that one, and those are the things we're adjusting for now. So
Okay.
I will open it back up if anybody else has any other notes.
Just a quick thing. I believe I did find the document online. We'd wanted to post it to our front page, but the timing was not able to work out on that. But I'm going to post this in the chat for yourself, Mr. White, and anyone else who wants it. Should be there in just a moment.
And which version is that we're switching to?
We're not switching. It's just Mr. White did, for some reason, did not receive a copy, so we're just getting it over to him.
Okay.
Mr. Cathcart, to address diversify and increasing housing stock 5, I think the intent behind that one was to really target areas to minimize single family housing, and that areas that are near transit and employment are best suited for higher densities. And so rather than use that land for low density single family, that would be the best location to direct those middle housing or higher density housing types. So the intent behind that policy, I think, was to guide growth in areas that make the most sense. I think though, yeah, if that
Okay,
makes
so-
sense.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I guess if the focus is high density, I mean, the focus is high density, but if it's missing middle, then my main thrust is just don't prohibit, encourage, incentivize, all those good things. So
That is heard. Thank you.
Just a heads up, this is Ellen Maroshin, the clerk. Your documents were sent out to you July 3rd. If you want to go back and check, it should be in your emails and your Outlook as well.
Is there in Washington State at all any types of zoning right now that exclude single family housing? Is anyone doing that?
I don't believe there's any exclusion of single family housing, just the expansion of the middle housing. I think that was House Bill 1110, where I think single family zones allow for a broader range of densities rather than restricting a type of housing.
Yeah,
Um,
so it seems like we don't even have a practice of doing that in Washington right now.
Yeah, and I think just to put a little bit of a finer point on that and what Tate had mentioned, I think our intention with that was to just kind of say we're not going to prohibit middle housing or more dense development in areas, that are well suited for it. I understand, like reading the policy, I guess it does sort of sound like we're going to prohibit single family, which was not our intention writing it. I think we can make that a bit clearer. So that's a good note on that one.
I just looked at the clean version for the first time and it seems like it's a lot shorter.
Yes, the edits to this have been pretty extensive. So the track changes copy has another page or two in there.
Okay.
Since we've sent out the draft, we've worked to make it a lot clearer. So the next draft you see should be a lot more legible.
Okay, I will stop looking at the track changes one because probably a lot of what I'm saying doesn't even matter right now.
If yeah, I was trying to think of how to make sense of track changes out loud. Then I was like, you know what? I'm not sure I can, so I'm just gonna stop talking.
I understand what it is. I don't know.
Yeah, I understand.
Usually you get two colors and not so much stuff that's been taken out in the drafts we get at the
Yeah,
city.
the tricky thing is that this one went through, I think, 4 or 5 different people. So there's a lot of, yeah, we're working to make it clear. I'll leave it at that.
I think we'll open it back up. Is there any other comments from panelists? I know we were gonna allow participants to speak as well. We don't have it so that they can just speak. They have to raise their hand, but I do see a couple hands raised. If we want to move to attendee participation, Ella will have to allow that. We can start with Kevin Frybot at the city.
I don't think I have my hand up, Tate. Sorry about that. At least it's not. Oh, it is. I'm sorry. I must have clicked it by accident. I'll shut up.
That is all good. No worries. We'll move to Brett Lucas.
Yeah, this is Brett here with the city of Cheney. Overall, I think, we'll be having discussions with our mayor on the housing policies. I think overall, they're okay in terms of being very general. I like the idea, instead of some of the shells, maybe some shoulds for some of the smaller towns, maybe towns that are 20,000. And I say that basically as our infrastructure may not be able to support higher densities in certain areas. We'll also be seeing where bus rapid transit, STA kind of comes into the picture. We probably will see some higher densities around bus rapid transit stations, maybe, 200, 500-foot radius or something like that. I don't know. But I think I'd like to see some shoulds in there versus shells on a few of those things, or the caveat, a little more flexibility for the smaller towns. Just as we're a different dynamic than city of Spokane. I think if we have some flexibility, I think I'll be able to get the mayor to buy off on this.
Yeah, and I think that's a good note, Brett. What are, gosh, what's the phrasing I'm looking for? Since we sent it that last draft on June 18th, I believe it was, we've gone through internally and made the language more consistent and then double checked. Just read through it again and kind of said, well, wait a minute, this looks like we're mandating it when we didn't really mean to. So we've gone through and fixed some of those. So the new draft, which I can't remember, I think we're sending that out. Well, I don't want to say a day, I don't remember offhand, but that is all to say that hopefully when you see the new draft, some of those comments will be remedied there. It is our intention, just kind of from a broad view, to not mandate anything that's not already mandated by state law. So we are not intending to require anything new of yourself in Cheney or any of the other smaller towns.
No, and that's fine. I'm just looking for the flexibility, I guess. What we're looking for is just kind of, we're reacting to the housing market just as much as anybody else is, and we're trying to get housing in Cheney about the same time, realizing there's a lot of moving parts to make this work.
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear. It's not a one size fits all approach. And we're hoping to, yeah, hopefully with the new draft, it does a better job of kind of recognizing that. So we look forward to hearing your feedback on that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Let's see. Councilwoman Klitsky, I see you had a question on land dedication in the chat. Actually, you know what? Well, I was going to kick it over. There's a gentleman from Community Frameworks here, but I guess we can take it and we can let him comment in a moment. A land dedication would essentially be a jurisdiction either dedicating, gifting land to a nonprofit developer or whoever the municipality chose to, or giving it under very favorable circumstances. I see Pavel's here from our Housing and Community Development Department. I wonder if you might be able to speak to that in a little bit more detail, Pavel.
Sure. Let me see if I have the RCW over here. Should have it somewhere here. So basically there's an RCW out there that allows jurisdictions to essentially gift land to developers for the purpose of affordable housing. And this is just one of the incentives that jurisdictions can provide for, supporting affordable housing. It could be either, tax exemptions. It could be different grant or funding sources that we have within like the city or the county, giving them preferable loan terms, giving grants. And this is just one other incentive that could be potentially utilized and is allowable under RCW, whatever it is. I'm having trouble finding it, but that's essentially what it is. I could put in the chat what the RCW is once I find it.
Yeah, Pavel, if you could, that would be great. Does that answer your question, Councilwoman Klitsky?
Okay,
right,
so
see.
I was looking
I
at a
got
different
it.
screen. I couldn't unmute.
It's RCW
That's okay.
39.33.015. I'll throw that in the chat as well.
Yeah, the RCW is helpful. I was just wondering if that's a defined term in our RCWs or if that's a term we're just using to cover things. Because I think that possibly in the future I won't be the only one that doesn't know what the options are under that bullet point.
Yeah, certainly. And we've had some similar comments on excuse me, on other pieces of this saying, gosh, what is this? What does X mean? Because over here it means this, but over here it means this. So we're planning to kind of expand. There's a section of the CPPs, the glossary or the definition section. I can't remember offhand, but we're planning to throw some of these in there and be clear. No, we're talking about X exactly. Here's what it is. Here's how we define it, so that we can be a little clearer on that. In Councilman Cathcart, I see you had a question there. Did we touch on what you were asking, or can we expand on that in a little more detail?
I think the clarification made that clear to me. So thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Let's see. Oh yes, we can. Ella, if we're able to open it to Linnell, I think we have a comment from the public. All right, Linnell, you have the floor.
I just have, thank you. A couple of questions. One is the people in the lodges cannot see the chat, and I would love to have a link to the document that's going to go to the Plan Commission because I am awash in the website, but I'm unable to find it. So I appreciate that. The other thing is when you said that there would be no new mandates in this, I may be on the wrong page here, but it seems to me that with trying to accommodate some of the climate change, the additional chapter or information and planning that needs to go into the comprehensive plan, it's possible that there would be some new mandates, and I'm sensitive to the difference between shall and should, but I wonder if you want to expand on the mandate comment that you made. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. And just briefly on the chat thing, I did try to post it in public chat, but for some reason it only lets me post it to hosts and panelists. I'll try to figure that out and see if there's a way we can get it. I can certainly get it out to you, but I'm conscious there's many other people that would also like to see it. So I'm trying to think internally how we can get it out to everyone, but I digress. In regards to your question, there certainly are going to be new mandates for comprehensive plans. It's just that those are coming from GMA and from the state legislature for this time around. What I meant to say is Tate and myself, the county, we're not trying to create new things for the city or, Cheney to do out of whole cloth. We're taking things that come from the state that are new mandates, but we're not just deciding, hey, you also have to do X, Y, and Z. Does it answer your question?
It does. I wonder if for the unincorporated areas, the county might have some mandates.
Could you elaborate on what you mean by that?
Well, outside of the jurisdictions that are already established, and I don't know what those mandates might be. They might
Sure.
have something to do with servicing density. But I just wondered if in the unincorporated area, there's the possibility that mandates might be included.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw this to my.
And I don't have any agenda around it. I just been trying to be clear.
No, absolutely. I'm gonna throw this to my colleague Tate here.
Yeah, so there are small differences between GMA requirements that apply to cities and their urban growth areas and the county's unincorporated urban growth areas. I can't point to the specific requirements that the county doesn't have to meet in the unincorporated. There's certain things with like House Bill 1337, I believe, with the allowance of two ADUs. Like I believe those don't apply to us in the unincorporated areas while they do the cities. There's small things like that that I think to address what you're saying, a lot of the unincorporated county and our urban areas have to meet the same mandates as the cities do. There's just very small differences. So in terms of our countywide planning policies, there's not a whole lot of additional mandates that we could apply to ourselves that would, I think, be necessary. We definitely can consider, mandating or suggesting that us at the county and unincorporated areas could do more. But as of right now, the mandates are very similar between us and the unincorporated areas and the cities from GMA. Does that answer your question, Linnell?
It kind of does, and I'll follow up because I don't want to derail you too far, but I, of course, have the concern about conservation and set-asides and those kinds of issues. So there may be a mandate conversation about that.
Of course, yeah, you have our
Outside the
emails.
urban growth area.
Yeah, and I'll just briefly touch on that real quick before throwing it back to the steering committee. Linnell, I should have just sent you the CPPs. Hopefully you get them in your email. I apologize if I have the wrong email. I can circle back. One of our colleagues at the city, Tyrrell, just reminded us that we will also be doing comp plan policies for the county. The CPPs here are kind of a higher level thing that apply to everyone. But we are going to be looking at a lot of the topics you're talking about kind of at the individual, at the county level specifically in our comp plan policies. So yeah, and we'll be doing that over the next couple of years. So you'll have many opportunities to be involved in that as well.
So I would just weigh in on the places where we should use stronger language and mandates should be involved, I think are the areas where we have high capacity transit. That's a significant public investment. And so if you have a transit stop somewhere and you're not allowing density, you're kind of doing a disservice to the system.
Yeah, that's very much heard. And I think going back to the one Cathcart made a comment on where we say minimize single family near those areas, where I think we should use more encouraging language rather than restrictive. I think the intent of that policy is going towards what you're talking about and sort of strategizing around our transit and employment centers for those higher density uses or allowing for those. This is also, I think, going to help guide the discussion for the housing allocation and those methodologies. And that's also going to impact you know, considering strategies like what you just said of allocating housing and in ways that make the most sense regarding public transit. I'll open it back up if there's any more comments from panelists or attendees. If you want to raise your hand, if there's anything else like that would like to be said.
I guess I could just throw a clarifying thing about the land dedication thing. I know that a lot of jurisdictions worry about the gifting of funds or gifting of any public resources. If it's basically this RCW allows you to do that and it won't be considered gifting of funds. Essentially, you would want to for any of the smaller jurisdictions that might want to look into this, essentially you would just gift the land and maybe just use a regulatory agreement to restrict the land to affordable housing activities for a certain amount of years. So if it's like a $500,000 parcel, you could essentially just throw a regulatory agreement onto that parcel for 20 years, let's say. And it essentially is not gifting of funds, but you're helping the nonprofit or whoever the developer is to get affordable housing on it.
Thank you, Pavel. If there's no other comments, we might wrap it up a little early. I will mention one thing. The next steering committee, the full steering committee will be on July 17th, and we will be discussing the CPP sort of schedule. A lot of it might just be what we talked about today, but we will be talking about that along with the housing allocation methods. Just to brief on the upcoming schedule, we're going to, Bongo and I are going to take into account all the feedback we've got, make iterations to it, and then the plan is to recirculate that draft to the public on July 26th. And then moving forward, we'll have more public comment, more feedback, and more iterations heading to that recommendation goal on September 18th. So that is the plan as of right now. And with that, I think we will end this workshop unless there is anything else. Cool. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We appreciate the feedback.
Thank
It
you.
has all been extremely helpful for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.